Oh, that's right. Yeah, Morgan. Yeah, just go ahead and yeah, if you guys just want to do it like that, that's fine as well.
I mean, I know it looks sloppier. I could have copied and pasted it into a Word document, but I also noticed, Morgan, at the bottom on this first slide, I used to have everybody's name here in the group, and that seems to be gone too at the very bottom. Oh, perfect. There it is. I just want to give everybody credit for being here.
Perfect. All right. Oh, where did it go? So those are the people. All right, go ahead.
Okay, you want me to start?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. We're going to do a presentation tonight on HIPAA and what it is. In this group, we have Kelly, Jamie, Annalise, Katie, Morgan, and Rachel. What is HIPAA? HIPAA is the Federal Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. This legislation was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. The primary goal of this law is to make it easier for people to maintain their current health care and to have their privacy protected. HIPAA gives privacy for the patient on a national level. Patient's information is protected, and the patient must sign to have their health information released to other healthcare providers. This gives complete control to the patient. Here are just a couple jokes that we have up on the wall at my hospital that I work at, just to kind of remind people in an amusing way to keep patients' privacy, not to talk about patients' medical conditions or whatnot in the cafeteria or in the elevators, because you just really never know who's listening. You see this poor lady's trying to leave the doctor's office and the nurse is calling after her, revealing her privacy. And then you got the little two kids playing knock-knock jokes.
So the history of HIPAA, our HIPAA history lesson started on 21st of August in 1996 when the Healthcare Insurance Portability Act, or HIPAA, was signed into law as an act to improve the portability and account of health insurance coverage for employees between jobs. Other objectives of the act were to combat waste, fraud, and abuse in the health insurance and healthcare delivery. The act also contained passages to promote the use of medical savings accounts by introducing tax breaks, providing coverage for employees with provides coverage for employees with pre-existing medical conditions, and simplifies the administrative of health insurance. The procedure for simplifying the administrative of health insurance became a vehicle to encourage the healthcare industry to computerize patients' medical records. This particular act was later came into the HIPAA because they didn't do everything on the computer first. Continued history, on August 18th, 1998, the legislation was proposed to help with new electronics. So the electronics came out because on the papers wasn't as safe and it wasn't as protected and the security wasn't as high. And then on November 3rd, 1998, the privacy rule was proposed, and it was again improved standards, and then the information was talked about and with unauthorized individuals, and it just helped better access health information. And then another one about the HIPAA history is, once HIPAA had been signed into law, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services set about creating the first HIPAA privacy and security rules. The privacy rule had an effect compliance date of April 14, 2003. And it defined protected health, or PHI, as any information held by a covered entity which concerns health status, the provision of healthcare or payment for healthcare that can be linked to an individual. The start of the HIPAA security rules, some instructions were issued on how PHI should be disclosed, and that permission should be sought from patients before using their personal information for marketing, fundraising, or researching. It also gave patients the right to withhold information about their healthcare and from health insurance or providers when the treatment is privately funded. The HIPAA security rule came into force 2 years later after the original legislation on April 21st, 2005, dealing with specifically electronically stored PHIs. The security rule laid down 3 different security guards, which she'll talk about in the next slide. and that must be adhered to in the full order to comply with HIPAA.
So once these rules of HIPAA were set in place, there were 3 ways that they used in order to make sure that the information of patients stayed confidential. The first way was by involving administration to help create these policies and enforce the ways in which they were used concerning patient information. The second way was to make sure that there wouldn't be any physical access to this data. So in other words, keeping the information of patients stored in a secure spot that's only able to be accessed by appropriate individuals. And then the third way is to make sure that when patient information is being transferred, it's protected from outside access, especially when transferring over open networks. So when any of these rules of HIPAA are violated, it's this long process that has to be followed that costs a lot of money and time. There's an investigation that first has to be launched into the cause of the breach of HIPAA. And through this, they can find where the improvement needs to be made, or if there needs to be a safeguarding system installed. That can be kind of a significant cost. There also needs to be notification letters sent out to the individuals who were affected by the breach. And sometimes in cases of 500 people or more, the media and the Secretary of Breaches has to be notified. And this can cost time from the employees that need to take time to send out those letters, can also take away time from patients. And then continuing on with that, in order to prevent identity theft, the entity that caused the HIPAA breach is actually required to provide free credit monitoring for up to 1 to 2 years, and this can cost around $12 per victim per month. There are also other fines that are involved. The Office of Civil Rights issues fines, as well as the Attorney General, if an entity that caused the breach doesn't comply with the terms. For breaches at a state level, and this can cost up to about $25,000. And so, and then continuing on again with that, when there is a breach in HIPAA, the company that caused it could also lose some of their business, and that could have a negative impact on their reputation, which can also cause loss of money and time. There's also a chance that victims will create lawsuits, which sometimes can cost around $1,000 per victim. And then companies are also required to create a website or give out information to victims for a hotline for those that have been affected by a breach in HIPAA. So this list is pretty long on how a breach in HIPAA creates a need for a lot of time and money to be spent in order to correct the mistake. So it just kind of shows the importance of having these rules set in place and make sure that patient information stays secure.
Okay, so the portability portion of HIPAA, it was made to increase the portability of health coverage for employees and insurance. It also limits the exclusions that can be applied by insurance companies pertaining to pre-existing conditions. So if you have something that will have developed that's they cannot refuse you because of that. It prohibits discrimination against dependents because of the current health status, so they can't just drop you because you're in the ICU and are gonna accrue more costs. It also allows people to enroll in a new plan when special circumstances arise. So if you get divorced or there's a death of the person that carries the insurance. It also gives people the right to purchase insurance if no group health insurance is available to them and they have exhausted their COBRA, which COBRA will be discussed in the next slide. COBRA stands for Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. The COBRA, it requires group health plans to provide continuation of health insurance that would otherwise have been canceled because of certain specific events. These events include death of covered employee, termination or reduction in hours of a covered employee. So if their hours went below the benefit hours that are required to have the insurance, divorce or legal separation with the covered employee becoming eligible for Medicaid, or a child's loss of dependent status. So when you turn 26 years old and you can't be on your parents' insurance, those covered by lost insurance plans are not required to enroll in COBRA, but it is, because of HIPAA, it is there for them if they need it. If they want to enroll in it, they have to enroll within 30 days of the loss of their previous coverage. COBRA applies to group health insurance plans for private sector employees who employ more than 20 employees and state or local government employers. There's also another, I believe it was called mini COBRA plans, that are available for people that are employed in private sectors that have less than 20 employees. COBRA doesn't apply to federal employees, churches, or church-related organizations. When an employee is terminated or their hours are reduced, they or their dependents may use COBRA for up to 18 months for all approved reasons. For loss of coverage to the employee, and the dependents may use COBRA for up to 36 months. It's all just the matter of why you lost your insurance. And then on the next slide, it talks about employees may be required to pay for the coverage if they choose to be on the COBRA, and they have to pay their portion that they were paying originally, and they also have to pay the portion that the employer was paying, and then they also have to pay a 2% administrative fee. So it's going to cost them a lot more to use COBRA. And then the only way that COBRA plans may be terminated are if one or more of the following conditions occur. The premiums are not paid in a timely manner and in full. The previous employer stops providing the group health plan, so if they change to a different provider, and those covered on the plan become eligible for Medicare benefits, or those covered on the plan engage in conduct that would justify terminating the plan. So like if they committed fraud with their insurance.
All right, great job. You guys covered the topic really well. HIPAA is a very important topic that I'm sure all of you are aware. But yeah, great job covering that. I really appreciate you guys doing that. So I'm going to just ask you guys the question I ask everybody. So I'll start with Jamie. The question is just, what was the most interesting thing that you learned as you were studying this topic?
I was very interested to learn about COBRA. I didn't realize all the benefits that it had if you were to lose your employment, and I didn't realize that it was out there and an option for people to use. And so it was very interesting to me to see that. So then if I ever got in that situation, I would know that I could use it.
Definitely. I mean, COBRA is a great option for people, but it is super expensive, just so you're aware. All right. See, Katie, same question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was actually just surprised to see all of the different they have to follow after there's a breach in HIPAA. I mean, I work in a physical therapy clinic, and so I have to have patients sign HIPAA agreements, and the people that come in have to sign it as well, that are shadowing. But I had never really thought about how much of an impact it would have if someone had broken HIPAA. So it was just interesting to see all the things that go into that, and just how much cost it is if you break HIPAA.
Definitely. All right, Kelly, same question.
I think the thing that I thought was the most interesting is that HIPAA isn't older than it is, and that Bill Clinton just signed it into law in 1996. You know, I've been in healthcare for 27 years now at the same hospital, and we've just always have just known what it feels like. We've always just known that, you know, there's privacy, and we every year we annually get tested on, you know, lectured about, you know, all this different kinds of stuff about privacy and, you know, infection control and stuff, and just to hear and to learn that it was kind of feels like it's in its infancy and how important it is. I just feel like it was always there and it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It really isn't that old, but I mean, it is something that is harped on and made sure. I mean, it's very important, right? So people, it's very important. I mean, there's all sorts of expenses and fines that you can get if you violate HIPAA. So Same as it happens the same. I'm sure what happens at your hospital happens at the hospital where I work. All sorts of education and people worrying about HIPAA, which makes me feel comfortable as a patient. So,
Right.
All right, Morgan, same question.
I think for me, it was fun to see how it evolved over time. How they focused on paperwork at first and then going on to technology. And I also found it interesting. It wasn't just about keeping patients' confidentiality. It had other parts involved in it as well. Because I always thought it was just confidentiality.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch more to HIPAA than just that privacy part, but you also have that portability aspect. Definitely. All right, Rachel. We can't hear you, Rachel. If it looks like you're not on mute anymore, though. Not a big deal. I'll go ahead and stop the recording though now.